praise you in the storm, and everything I go through. You're the one who walked on water and told the storm to calm. You're the one who walked on water, told the storm to calm. You called a dead man from the tomb and healed a servant miles away. Called a dead man from the tomb and healed a servant miles away. With just a word, just a word, can praise you in the storm, and everything I go through, I can praise you in the storm, and everything I go through. You're the one who walked on water, told the storm to calm. You're the one who walked on water, told the storm to calm. You called a dead man from the tomb and healed a servant miles away. You called a dead man from the tomb, healed a servant miles away. With just a word, just a word, with just a word. Hello, welcome to my podcast today. My name is Pastor Melinda, and today we're going to be talking about matters of the heart, because heart issues do matter with God. That's an important factor. You know, according to Proverbs 4 and 23, we are told to guard our heart with all diligence. That means with everything in you, wholehearted devotion. That's how important it is that we are to put a guard on our heart. Be careful about everything that we're doing, because out of our heart comes the issues of life, which has to do with everything: your actions, your words, your attitudes, your decisions, and the overall directions of your life. You know, in Deuteronomy 30, chapter 30, verses 19 through 20, the Lord talks about, he says, I set before you this day life and death, blessing and cursing. And then he goes on and tells us, choose life. So he tells us what he puts before us. And what that means is, you know, he didn't make us like, you know, puppets on a string that, you know, we just automatically do everything. We are given choices. We are free moral agents. That's how he made us. He made us with a choice. And that can be a blessing to us or a cursing, depending on what we choose to do. And so if we choose his way, which he says, choose life, he tells us what to do. But, you know, because we have a choice, we can decide, well, I don't know. I know this seems to everybody and to the Word of God and to Lord, this seems like the right way to go. You know, the Word of God says that there is a way that seems right to man. Yeah, we all think that our ideas and our way and our path of doing things seems right. But the end leads to destruction. And you know, I can testify to that because I have made a lot of decisions in my past instead of diligently guarding my heart. And, you know, guarding your heart means you don't let your affections and your emotions get involved in the situation and your decision making, which I did time and again. I would let my emotions and my heart get involved in it. And then when I made the wrong decision and I look back and it's like, that really wasn't God. And so God says, you know, if you go this way, you know, the curses and you know, the destruction and things come up on us. But if you go his way, then you are choosing life for yourself. And, you know, this decision about heart matters, you know, it affects not just your walk with God, it affects your decisions and how you're responding to life and your heart issues, because the Word of God says, you know, to guard it, because the issues of life are in your heart, the issues of life. And so when you have your heart cleansed and purified before the Lord so that you want to make the right decisions, then that is the better way. Then you are opening the door for God's blessings and His favor to be upon you. And things happen to people because they make wrong choices in their life. And some of those choices, have to do with maybe health. I walked down a path myself that if I had kept going that way, I could have easily become like an alcoholic, or, I tried smoking before and that didn't work, and thank God it didn't. But, I could have been addicted to drugs or alcohol or smoking or any of those things, because for whatever reason, the devil, our flesh, the deep blue sea, circumstances in our life, friends, all kinds of things in this life affects us and tempts us to go by way of something other than God. Just try this cigarette, just try this, drug, just try this alcohol. This will make you feel better, and this will be fun, whatever comes at you. Sometimes, it's work environment. There's all kinds of things that gets opened up and affects your decisions in your heart and your life. But when you pray like David did, he prayed, search me, O God, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And, even the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 6, it says, when you're praying, Our Father which art in heaven, we're praying and talking to Him about lead us not into temptation. But you see, none of these things that I'm bringing up are going to matter, and if you don't care about what matters to God. And these are the things I'm talking about. These are the teachings that I've been feeling led to bring forth, is because we first of all have to get to a place where we care what matters to God, because that's the first step in our heart. That's the first place that makes us, want to get born again and become a follower of Jesus. There's I have learned working on the streets with people, you have to ask the right question to people, because when you're trying to lead people to the Lord, a lot of people will answer you, will say, yeah, I know the Lord. Yeah, I believe. But the real question I'm learning, which gets right to the heart matter, is, are you a follower of Jesus Christ? That's what it comes down to. Because if you are following Jesus, you're laying down your life for Him. You're following in His footsteps the things that He did. And it matters because, people who don't care about God will say, yeah, I believe there's a God. But they don't really want to serve Him. They don't want to follow Jesus. And so, you've got to initially get to the place where you say, I do know that Jesus is the Son of God, and I know that He died on the cross so that I can have forgiveness of sin, because there had to be a ransom paid, a price paid for my sins. And also, He made a way that I can be reconciled to God. That right there is worth saying, yes, I will follow Jesus. I'll follow Him. Well, how are you going to follow Him unless you have a heart change inside of you, where you are, searching out the Word of God and finding what is it that Jesus did and what is it that Jesus said. And when you find out what He does in all these circumstances, like, we have the 10 Commandments out there, thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not lie, and all these things. And we are to keep those. But, along comes Jesus, and in the New Testament, He brought everything down to 2 commandments. And, when the lawyer, tried to trap Him, and ask Him, well, what do you think is the most important commandment? And He says, well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength. And see, if you're doing that, then you're going to be able to follow the next commandment, which is love your neighbor as yourself. Now, if you bring all the commandments down, if you're loving God like that, see, you're not going to be hating on your neighbor, and you're not going to be distant from the Lord, because he says, the ancients said that, do not commit adultery. But Jesus says, but I say, if you even look at a woman with lust in your heart, you have committed adultery in your heart. And the commandments said, you should not murder. You should not murder. Thou shalt not murder. But if you have hatred and bitterness in your heart toward people, then he says you are committing murder in your heart. Because see, all of these things are causing hardening of the arteries in the spirit realm, hardening of the arteries. And they're going to affect your thoughts and your motives and your emotions and desires. That's why we need a clean heart before the Lord. And this is something that's part of laying down your life, of dying. Paul said in the New Testament, I die daily. It is a daily thing. And we're not talking about, physical dying. We're talking about dying to your carnal nature, your temptation when somebody gets in your space, in your face, and they're saying things that, it's offensive to you, and you just want to give them the 1, 2, what for right back to them. But, according to what Jesus said, he said, if someone slaps you on the one cheek, turn the other cheek. In other words, don't give back to them what they gave to you. If we're really a follower of Jesus, we're laying down the world system and the world way of doing things, because the world system is creating hardening of the arteries in their spiritual walk with life. And what happens in the natural, can kind of be a carryover into the spiritual. And so we are to be rooted and grounded in the Word of God, so we can see how he lived and what God expects of us and what pleases the Lord. And here's another heart issue thing, do we even care what pleases God, or are we more interested in what pleases ourselves? Well, thank you for tuning in, and for part 1 of Matters of the Heart. I invite you to tune in next week for part 2 of Matters of the Heart.